Hi, my name is Chioma Ikejiani, and you're watching AMOI Unplugged, Exploring Diversity. There's a saying that water is life. Whether you believe it or not, water is vital for sanitation and agriculture. Today, I sat down with the Honorable Minister Suleiman Adamu, and he spoke passionately about issues confronting the Lake Chad, revitalizing the river basin authorities, and the water resource bill. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interview. You've had quite a hectic schedule. I remember watching in the swearing-in ceremony. The president made this statement during the swearing-in ceremony of ministers, and I quote, "Since our inauguration of May 29, 2015, the vice president and I have been mindful of the need to constitute a cabinet that will best deliver our expectations of a better country than we inherited. I have been mindful of the need to ensure that the appointment of new ministers translates into putting round pegs in a round hole, while showing sensitivity to our diversity as a people and our various positions as group of stakeholders in our country. There are many industry stakeholders in the water resource sector that believes that the Buhari's approach of putting round pegs in round holes definitely applies to you. So here you are, you're in this office, and the lives of so many people that work in this sector depends on you. What exactly did you inherit when you got here? What was the status of this sector as of November 2015, specifically in terms of policy, in terms of legislation, and institutional developments, in terms of inside the organizational structure of the sector itself?
Well, first of all, I met a ministry that was supposed to be purely technical and professional.
Okay.
It was anything but.
Wow.
I think things were being done, projects were being implemented without the proper guidelines. Remember, I came from the private sector, from a consulting practice where I knew what it meant to develop a project. You
That's
have the
right.
conceptualization to doing all the necessary studies, the planning, the design,
budgets,
the estimates, yeah.
the professionalism of it.
Exactly, and then before you get to the implementation, a lot of relevant steps in that had been jettisoned.
Wow.
So I found a ministry that was not working like the technical ministry that it should be. I made departments that are working in silos. You have projects that a dam project that has a water supply component, an irrigation component, but the departments were not talking to each other. Everybody was kind of
on their own.
Yeah, and protecting his own turf, kind of. So that's on the internal side. And of course, when you look at the sector in general, there have been a lot of things that have been that ought to be done that have not been done. The Millennium Development Goals were not achieved, the target that we wanted to achieve. There has been a pending water resources bill that was drafted and discussed and debated and left lying on the shelf since 2008. That's on the legislation side. And some critical reforms needed to be done and were all included in that bill and had not been done. Granted that there have been some movements, the creation of the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency, the creation of the Nigerian Integrated Water Resources Commission, but then even the law establishing the Nigerian Integrated Water Resources Commission is not in place. So, and then there are other agencies like Gurara Water Management that I felt are unnecessary.
Wow.
Because there are existing institutional arrangements to cater for such kind of things. So I saw a place that needed a lot of reform. There is a lot of gap, succession planning was not there. We had some departments that were very top heavy. There are no middle level professionals to handle projects and so on and so forth. So A lot of problems. And then, of course, we inherited a number of projects, 116 very critical projects. Some had been abandoned, some were at critical points of completion, substantially completed, but for 3-4 years, no financing, and some projects had been finished, technically and practically finished, and there was no exit plan to take them, for the ministry to take them over, and the contractors were still on site, being paid a lot of money, billing, but they're not necessarily being paid, but they were billing for the period that they were staying there. And a lot of confusion, and we needed to straighten all those things out.
And then as someone that was a consultant, obviously funding was critical, because if you don't have funding, you don't have anything. So on top of the internal stuff that you didn't think was working right, the external issues, because there was no professionalism, even on the outside. And then when you looked at how much money can we spend, how much money do we have to execute, when you sit in your office, what was it like for you? What was the first step you did in order to put things into the right steps?
Well, 2 weeks after I came into office, we organized a retreat.
Okay.
And I called all the stakeholders of the water sector, and we sat down and discussed. And we came up with 6 or 7 key priority areas that we were going to deal with. One of them was to look at the ongoing projects and see how we could deal with them. And I took a position from day one that I was not going to entertain any new projects. Yes. That there are sufficient projects in this ministry for us to try and finish, because some investment has been made in this project, and it doesn't make sense for us to start new projects and widen the problem, because we had lots of liabilities. I inherited 89 billion naira liabilities.
Oh my goodness.
Money that is, bills that need to be paid worth 89 billion, and a commitment of another 200 to 300 billion naira to finish all the projects that we inherited. We didn't have that money. That very year, I think 2015, the capital budget for this ministry was just about 11 billion naira. So
goodness,
what could we do?
Debt.
Yeah. So we now had to sit down. First I said, okay, let's do a technical audit of the projects. We did a technical audit to find out their status. Some of them, we said, okay, these are no longer, they're not even, we can't just continue with them. Let's just eliminate them. The rest we prioritized. High priority, medium priority, low priority. The high priority projects are the ones that we've been concentrating on. And first of all, high priority, we needed the low hanging fruit. Some projects were at 90% completion. Some projects had been completed but not taken over. We dealt with all those and cleared them. And then we now taking up those that are 60-70%, or those that have huge impact on the population, and we're working on them. Some of them had to be revised. There are some of the projects that had not been
even looked at
for 17 years.
Wow!
And I know a project that was at 50% in 2000. It was at 50% completion, and for 17 years, nothing was done. And you can imagine an irrigation project lying waste for 17 years, with rains every year. The whole place had been overgrown by weeds. And these are the projects that we felt we needed to tackle, because they had a lot of impact on the community. So, and then we also said, well, let's look at what other alternative ways of funding do we have. And that's why we accelerated the passage of the Water Resources Bill, because there's a provision in that bill,
which I really, because I've heard so much about this.
Yeah, okay, but at least let me say that there was a provision there that will allow for private sector participation, because we have to accept the fact that we cannot continue to run, we can never meet our water requirements in this country if we are going to rely solely on budgetary allocations from local governments, state governments, and the federal government. It's not going to work. We have to bring in the private sector into the picture. So that's another aspect we look at in terms of financing. Then we also open engagement with the development financial institutions, the World Bank, African Development Bank, and the rest. And we're already working on setting there's an action plan now we have on urban water supply. We're also talking with the ADB, although they are already doing some ongoing projects.
This is the African Development Bank.
Yeah, the African Development Bank. So we're expecting maybe to shape up some financial arrangement with them to continue to support, especially urban water supply projects. Then we are very lucky that we have the Natural Resources Development Fund, which is a fund that is established by law.
Okay.
And the president has been so graceful to support some of our irrigation development program, especially through that intervention.
Now, you mentioned the National Water Resource Bill. Tell me why you felt that it was really important to get it to the president so that he could take it to the National Assembly. Why was it right now?
Well, in whatever you are doing, I realize in government, first of all, you have to start from the basic principles. And the basic principles means you have to start from policy, institutional arrangement, regulatory framework, and so on and so forth. Now, it's not that there is no existing law. There is the Water Act 2004, which is governing the powers of the minister and the water resources sector in general. But this water resources bill, it's the experts at that time, the promoters of this bill, which, like I mentioned, the process started in 2006, felt that the laws were too fragmented. There was the Water Resources Act, there was the River Basins Act, there was the National Water Resources Institute Act, there was the Nigeria Hydrological Services Act, and in most countries of the world, you just have one water resources law. So they felt that it should be consolidated. And of course, Nigeria has subscribed to the concept of integrated water resources management, which was not part of the existing Water Resources Act, and they needed to bring such components into it to update the laws of the land to bring them at par with what obtains all over the world today. That was the whole purpose. Of course, there are key issues because we've also decided to transform our irrigation management system in the country. There was a component to recognize the need for farmers to be involved in irrigation activities and the maintenance of irrigation infrastructure, which requires that there should be some funds that are collected, as special accounts being created, and some devolution of the powers of the responsibilities in such a way that the federal government or state government will deal mainly with the main structures like the dam and the main canals, and the farmers will have the responsibility of managing and maintaining the secondary and tertiary canals. So we needed to also capture that into the law. Then the concept of integrated water resource management requires that communities and the catchments must have a say in how the water resources are managed. For instance, under the existing law, the Water Resources Act, under the existing Water Resources Act, I as minister can decide where to build the dam. I can instruct, just go ahead, build it, and so on and so forth. But I can assign anything, I can do anything with the water resources of this country. But the new law, which we wanted to bring, now says let's have catchment management committees. And it means also that this Integrated Water Resources Management Commission will have some strength, and it will devolve the powers of the minister, such that stakeholders need to be involved for any major water abstraction that is going to be made. If the dam is going to be built somewhere, there has to be stakeholder consultation, there has to be town hall meetings, there has to be environmental impact assessment.
Like in every other country.
Oh yes, but as it is now, of course, like I said, the Integrated Water Resources Management Commission is existing, but there is no law backing it. So if I want to be authoritarian or I want to be mischievous, I can use the authority under the National Water Resources, the Water Resources Act as it exists today, and decide what to do with any water body in this country.
What is the ministry doing to regulate or set guidelines for borehole drilling and use in Nigeria?
One, we need to get the state governments who are essentially responsible for water, and also the in the case of Abuja, the Ministry of Federal Capital Territory, to invest more in pipeborne water, in large-scale municipal water schemes. Look, I know they are very expensive, but we need to work, we can work in phases, in stages, and we need to do that. 20, 30 years ago, when I was working in Reka in Kano, probably 70% of the city was enjoying pipeborne water supply.
What happened?
Today,
what changed?
Well, first of all, I think successive administrations have not given priority attention to water. They have not been investing in water. Also, the fact that we've had a serious foreign exchange challenge. It makes it so expensive now to build water schemes. Budgetary provisions or internally generated revenue, or even the annual budgetary federal allocation is not enough to support that. But states have to accord it priority. There are windows, the World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, the African Development Bank, the European Union. They have, they've been spending money on, to provide capital for investments in water. And now we have an action plan on how to proceed. But we have now also created a partnership with the state government. For the first time, we have created a budget line in this ministry that allows for state governments to be supported. If they have a good urban water supply project, the federal government will be willing to put in up to 30% of the cost. Yeah, as support to them. There is a budget line created under the 2018 budget for that. We've started with 1 billion naira. And from next year, we're going to increase it to 3 billion, and we'll continue to do that.
I want to dig deeper. The issue of funding in the water resource sector. It's always been a major challenge over the past few decades, specifically with the abandonment of dam infrastructure and water supply schemes across the country. How has your government been able to redress the situation in its efforts to diversify the economy? I know this is something that you're obviously very passionate about.
Well, we have over 200 dams in this country. Some of them built for water, drinking purpose, others for irrigation, or a combination, because we call them multi-purpose dams. But it's so sad that if only governments in the last several decades have seen themselves as a continuum and continue to build on what the previous government had done, it would have been good for this country. And that's what we are trying to get back into now. Because you will see that the dam is finished. There's supposed to be an irrigation company. The dam is completed, commissioned with a lot of fanfare, but that's not the end purpose. The purpose is to have maybe 2,000-3,000 hectares of irrigation. And you find out that it has never been built. Then maybe after about 10 years, a new administrator will be thinking, okay, or somebody will make a representation from the community. They will now start the construction. They will start building the main canals. They will attain 30%, 40%. And once the champion of that project is no longer in office, that's the end of the story. We're trying everything we can to harness now what we have. Unfortunately, dams, like any other structure, have a lifespan. Some dams have 40, 50 years lifespan. And if nothing was done, the irrigation component or the water supply component was not built after 40 years, the dam is already approaching the end of its life. So, again, it's money wasted.
I want to quickly shift gears and talk about the Lake Chad Basin, because I know that is something that is also, it's retreating. And I know that this administration is working really hard to redress that situation. I'd like you to give us a brief overview of your efforts in this regard.
President Buhari has been very, very passionate about this Lake Chad issue. 50 years ago, it had a surface area of 25,000 square kilometers. It dropped to less than 2,500 square kilometers. So you can imagine a lake that has shrunk by 90%. As it is now, Nigeria used to have a chunk of that lake, but there is no water now within the Nigerian territory of lake. There is no water within the Nigerian part of the Lake Chad. So it's been a serious problem. 40 million people are involved. That region has the highest poverty indices, in the world. Lowest illiteracy, highest birth rate,
And now they have water issues.
Yeah, we have water issues,
which is a
and which
life
led to
source.
security issues. So if we don't sort out the problem of the region of the Lake Chad, we'll continue to have serious security problems in the northeast. And that is why it is a priority.
I know that Abuja hosted a conference.
Yes, we had an international conference. So this conference had two objectives. One, to get an international consensus that there is a need to save the Lake Chad first. Happily, we got that consensus that the Lake Chad must be saved from extinction. The second was to reach an international consensus on what is the best way to help, revive the lake. And there were options, various options discussed at the conference. And the one that came up was the one that has always been discussed, which is to do an interbasin transfer from the Congo Basin into the Lake Chad. And that's a 2,400 kilometer water transfer. There is a huge amount of water, billions of cubic meters of water flowing into the Atlantic Ocean within the Congo Basin. And the idea is to tap just about 8% of that water and through tunnels and pipes and into the existing river beds of River Chari and Lagon through Ubangi River.
In the last 3 years, you've had a number of programs, but I'd like you to talk to me about some of the programs that you have initiated, that like water sanitation. I know you've got a program that deals with open defecation. If you can just talk to me about that and how you're collaborating with other states in order to bring that into a national prominence.
Yeah, that came about because when I came into office, I asked this question: why did the Millennium Development Goals program fail? And I came to the realization that it was because we were relying 100% on maturity allocations and some special intervention funds. So we thought that we need to create something new. And we came up with the idea of this partnership for expanded water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. First of all, we looked at the rural areas. Although we've been branding 69% achievement in the Millennium Development Goals, but that's the national average because we did a lot better in the urban sector. But the rural population was still only about 52-55% access. So there is a lot of work to be done in the rural areas. And therefore, we started PWASH as a rural intervention. Mm-hmm. But I came to the realization that many states in this country, although they are constitutionally responsible for providing water and sanitation to the people, they are not taking that as a priority. And everybody is asking for federal government intervention. So we brought out this program and said, look, okay, we're coming back to you. Federal government will continue to support, but this time around you have to show us what you are doing. Because we'll not just be doing our own and then you fold your arms. So you have to do 100 schemes for us to do 100. And then we discussed with the donor agencies and development partners, and they all keyed in. So, okay, they'll be interested. And then another thing is to have a more coordinated approach because there are so many players. Open defecation is a serious problem. Nigeria has committed to ending it by 2025. So we stepped up the process. Now we're almost approaching 10 local governments in this country that are open defecation free. So we want to bring PWASH as an umbrella program so that everybody will key in, will now have basis to acquire a lot of information. We can redistribute we know what areas are in dire need and what areas really don't. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, you can have some real data.
Yeah, we want to capture corporate social responsibility funds. We want to get foundations and so on to do more of water schemes.
Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.